Most people will never buy the house. They'll rent. So here's the renter's version of the disaster, and it's grim. In 1970, about 1 in 4 renters was cost-burdened, spending more than 30% of income on rent. Today, about 1 in 2, and around 12 million households are severely burdened, handing over more than half of everything they make just to keep a roof on. Half your income, to exist somewhere. That used to be a 5-alarm crisis. Now it's drifting toward normal. So let's do the honest math on why rent specifically ate your life, because it's a different machine than buying, and it's rigged in its own special way. There's a comforting lie about rent, that it's the cheap option, the temporary thing while you save up. For most of history, true, rent was the affordable phase. Rent cheap, save, buy. But that whole ladder only works if rent stays low compared to your income, low enough to leave something to save. And that's exactly what broke. Rent didn't just go up. It went up faster than paychecks, for decades, until the cheap phase became the most expensive thing in your life and the exact thing making it impossible to save for the house. So renting stopped being the on-ramp and became the trap. Too expensive to save past, so you stay renting, so you keep paying it. Here's how that trap got built, 3 forces, and the third one's nasty. This is all from the housing economists at Harvard's Joint Center and the Census Bureau, same numbers policymakers use. And I'll keep the definitions honest, because half your check means something specific and I'm not going to fudge it. Let's go. First, the vocab, because the headlines blur it. You're cost-burdened if you spend more than 30% of income on rent and utilities. More than 30 cents of every dollar gone to shelter. You're severely cost-burdened if it's more than 50%. 30% is the old affordable rule. Above it, the math starts eating your food and savings. Now the numbers, around 22 million renter households. Just under half of all renters are burdened. That's a record. And about 12 million of them are severely burdened, paying more than half their income. Compare that to history. In the 60s and early 70s, only about a quarter of renters were burdened, and fewer than 1 in 7 were severe. So we didn't drift, we doubled. The typical renter now pays about a third of their income on rent, sitting right on the burden line, and a huge chunk has blown way past it into half my money is just rent. Start with the engine driving all of it. Rent grew faster than pay. Same disease we keep finding on this channel, the gap between what stuff costs and what you earn. Rent climbed faster than wages year after year. Each year looks small, rent up a few percent, pay up a little less, but compound a small gap over 30, 40 years and it's the difference between rent taking a quarter of your check and rent taking half. And rent has a vicious quality, wages don't. It's non-negotiable and recurring. You can skip a vacation. You cannot skip rent. Miss it and you're evicted. So when the gap widens, it doesn't hit your fun money first. It hits your savings, then your food, then your stability. The thing you can least avoid grew the fastest. That's force 1. But why did rent itself climb so hard? 2 more reasons stacked on top. Force 2 we built last video, so I'll be quick. But it hits renters harder. Remember the housing shortage, the millions of homes we never built? Here's what that does to rent. When there aren't enough homes to buy, people who would have bought can't. So they stay renting. That dumps a flood of frustrated would-be buyers onto the rental market, competing for the same apartments as everyone who was always going to rent. More people fighting over the same fixed number of rentals means landlords can raise rent and still fill the unit. There's always another desperate applicant. So the building shortage doesn't just price you out of buying, it shoves you into renting and makes that market brutal too. The buy market and the rent market aren't separate. The overflow from one floods the other. The shortage hits you twice. And then there's force 3, the one that turned rent into a toll booth. Here's the shift most people haven't clocked. In the last 15 years, your home stopped being housing to the people who own it and became a financial product. Big investors realized rent is a beautiful thing to own. A payment that must be made every month by someone who can't easily leave, that rises over time. From a Wall Street chair, that's not shelter. That's a bond that grows. So institutional money poured into rentals. And here's the genuinely unsettling part. Some big landlords started using the same pricing software. Algorithms that recommend your rent based on what every other landlord nearby is charging. When everyone prices off the same algorithm, you lose the one thing that used to protect renters. A landlord willing to undercut to fill a unit. The software basically goes, hold the price. Leave it empty a little longer, the math still wins. This is real enough that it's now the subject of major lawsuits. Honest framing. This isn't the origin of high rent, the wage gap and the shortage built that, but it removed the pressure valve. It made sure none of the slack ever reached you. Connect it to your actual life because this is where it becomes a trap, not just a bad year. The old ladder was, rent cheap, save the gap, buy, escape rent forever. Every rung needed rent to be low enough to leave a gap to save. But when rent takes a third to half your income, the gap vanishes. You can't save the down payment because the rent that's supposed to be temporary is eating the exact money that would end it. So you stay renting, which means you keep paying the thing preventing you from leaving. That's the trap. Rent is now expensive enough to stop you from ever escaping rent. And unlike the homeowner, the renter builds nothing. Same dollars out the door every month. One person ends up owning an asset, the other ends up owning a stack of receipts. Over a lifetime, that gap is the wealth divide. So, rent went from a quarter of your check to half for millions of people, and it wasn't one greedy landlord. It was wages falling behind, a shortage flooding the rental market, and rent quietly becoming a financial asset with the slack squeezed out. The one idea, rent stopped being the cheap phase and became the trap, expensive enough to keep you stuck in it. So the long game can't be rent forever and hope. It's moving dollar by dollar from the side that pays rent to the side that collects it. If this made the rent number make sense, subscribe. Honest version, no villain of the week. See you next one.